Leslie has been a course instructor on foreign language teaching methods and differentiated instruction and is a frequent presenter at state, regional, national conferences, specializing in best practices. She curates and creates resources to support language teaching and learning and shares them through her website. I totally recommend her website, www.grandforlang.com. Um, and also, she has experience in teacher and leadership development and leads training on instructional coaching, mentoring, leadership, and communication skills. You remember Leslie is the co-author of the Keys to Strategies for Language Instruction and serves on the boards of NACFO, ACFL, and you can help me, Leslie, here once again, even though I ask you a few minutes. NACFL, right?
That's full.
So in three board members leading in different committees, the leading and learning committee and also the professional development committee in these renowned groups. So Leslie, welcome to our webinar for EFOLTA and for and for the Indiana Language Roadmap. Is a total honor to have you here. One of two, next one on Thursday. Welcome, Leslie.
Awesome. Hello, everyone. And thank you for taking part of your afternoon out to spend some time with me today. And we are going to get started since Israel did a great job of telling you about me. So let's get right to what our topic is about today. Okay. So here we go. So welcome, welcome, welcome. I know we have lots of people here from Indiana, and I also know we have people here from outside of Indiana, which is awesome too, because that's the miracle of Zoom, right? So our topic today is social and emotional learning in the world language classroom. This has been so critical, especially during COVID, when we were looking at a whole lot of blank boxes and we weren't sure if anyone was listening to us, let alone how are we going to build relationships with these students we didn't even meet in person or couldn't even see. And so what lots of people are reporting now is that there are certain aspects of their teaching from COVID that they're actually going to hold on to. And one of those things is social and emotional check-ins. The idea that we're being intentional about checking in with our students about how they're doing, how they're feeling, and really getting to that social emotional side of things before we even think about covering content with them, right? And so that's what I think is critical here, is that we're really realizing that that was a plus out of our time running through virtual, hybrid, concurrent, all the different things you might have been doing, back to face, hopefully in the fall. So on this page, you'll see it has my website, and also on the bottom, it has my Pinterest name. So you can find me by my name, or you can find me by Grahn Forlang on Pinterest. At this point, I have close to 200 boards, I think. And then on the bottom right, you can see my Twitter handle. So if you tweet about today, I'd love for you to include me in that. And it's also at Grahn Forlang. So I'm pretty easy to find as long as you remember that moniker, Grahn Forlang. Okay, here are our objectives for our short time together. You're going to be able to leave here today to being able to define what social and emotional learning is. We're going to talk about some strategies for taking care of ourselves, because how can we take care of others if we're not also taking care of ourselves? We're going to plan some social emotional learning opportunities for students and think about how we're cultivating relationships and creating a caring classroom environment all throughout the year. We're not just caring about getting to know kids in the first 2 weeks, we're continuing to get to know them and build community throughout. So that's what my website looks like. And if any of you were following me during COVID, you know, if you click that black bar there on my homepage, it will take you to all the resources that I curated and created during COVID to support teachers through the shift. Several of those things related to what we're going to talk about today, and I will take us directly to them. So don't worry, you don't have to try to grab that right now. And that's what my Pinterest boards look like. As I shared earlier, I have close to 200. And there's going to be some specific boards that we look at today, and they're on your links page, which I'm going to share with you in a second, so you can go back to them later if you weren't able to take a look at them while I talked about them today. So here's the most important thing I want you to grab. This is your folder in Google Drive. So I've created a folder for today and for Thursday. So it's the same link for both, and you can access the resources there. So if you look at the screenshot here, there's just 3 resources in our folder. One is something that looks like 3 circles. One on the far right says self-care plan. And then the one in the center is a links page. That way you can go back and refine links to things that we talked about during our time together. And the other thing I love about Google Drive is that if I realize there's something else I should put in there for you, or that I should add to the links, I have my trusty piece of paper here, and I'll add that to it and then later add it to our folder. So that's what I love about Drive. It's so flexible. So we are going to start out with a social emotional check-in. If we're talking about social emotional check-ins, we need to model it, right? And so I want to know, how are you feeling today on the scale of guinea pigs? So take a look at my guinea pigs. Which of those guinea pigs best represents how you're feeling today? And then if you'd like to introduce yourself by telling me the language you teach or the state you're from, any of that kind of information, just so I get to know who's here, because I know we have over 100 people so far with us. And so please share a little bit about yourselves, and I'll ask my moderators to help me out with that. Does one of my moderators, do you mind sharing with me the kind of answers that are coming through?
All right, so there's a lot of different answers. I feel like I'm seeing a lot of 6s.
Okay.
Some people like from North Carolina, feeling a little bit fun today. There's also definitely some 9 and some 5s who are looking forward to snuggling up. So Chinese teachers, folks teach Spanish, French. We do have somebody who reports that they are a 1 because they are on the shore in New Jersey today.
Woo! Good for you.
Excellent, excellent. Let's see. Oh, someone calls out that they attended your previous workshop at Rutgers.
Oh, okay.
So they're happy to see you again today.
Awesome. Good to see you too.
Oh, and we have somebody here from Hawaii who is not in a sunglass mode. They're on mode 9, but that's okay.
So fun fact, I'm half Hawaiian and my family's from the Big Island. We can talk later. Okay, go ahead.
Let's see. And we've got a teacher who is a 6 who teaches Mandarin in Oregon, and they love this as a very inclusive opening activity.
Awesome. So I want you to think about when we're using these types of check-ins, and we'll talk more about them as we go on. We want to not just have kids tell me what number they are, but we want them to give me something in the target language back, right? Because we want this to have a communicative purpose and not just for students to say, I'm a 3, I'm a 5, I'm a 6, right? And so making sure we give them the sentence framing they need to be able to tell me about how they're feeling, or I'm giving them something to compare it to, like some of the emotions we've learned or weather we've learned, or something that I can make a connection to other than it just being really fun, right? Okay, let's go on. Thank you so much for sharing. All right, so as I said earlier, there is no way we can attend to others' well-being if we don't first pay attention to our own. And so this is critical. We want to make sure we're taking care of ourselves during this time. And this is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It may be familiar to you. And I want you to know that when we go through changes, so now our world is changing again, where we're going to go back, who knows if we're going to be wearing masks again and all of that, and that there is a hierarchy of needs that we have. And many of us started down at safety back in last March, so March of 2020, and we were like, oh no, am I going to be safe? There's this disease out there we're afraid of, right? And then the next is we needed to feel like we belonged to a group. And that was hard because we were all separated. And so I want us to pay attention to the fact that a lot of our well-being is connected to our needs. And for us to think about that hierarchy when we're analyzing kind of how we're feeling about, especially our jobs. And then the second thing I want us to look at is this model called SABAM. So it's the concerns-based adoption model. And these are the stages of concern we go through when we are being put through change. And so you'll notice at the bottom, it's awareness. What is this change? What's happening? And then I want to know how it's going to work. And then I'm going to want to know how it's impacting me. And if you work with teams, you want to be real, you want to heighten your awareness around this, that when you go back in the fall, there's probably going to be more changes, right? Not back to where we were in COVID, but probably different things going on. And so remember that it takes people a while to work their way through these stages of concern. And I also want to know where I am on those stages of concern. So I highly recommend those two visuals to kind of think about where am I right now in dealing with change in my life. So what I'd love to do now is I'd love for you to tell me a little bit about what you've been doing for your own well-being. So how have you been taking care of yourself lately, especially being able to disconnect from school a bit for the summer and things like that? I'd love to know how you're working through your own, addressing your own social and emotional well-being. So what I want you to do is you can go on your phone, you go to www.menti.com, and I'm going to do it with you right now and show you what I'm doing so that everybody knows what's going on. So www.menti.com. And then you're going to put in the code you see here on the screen. All right, so let me go there. So you'll get a message that says put in the code. And now you're going to put in the code you see 81987035. And you can see some people are already there because they're putting their ideas up. So now just fill in some of the ideas you're thinking into the blocks that you see. All right, let's see how people have been taking care of themselves. Racing BMX, that is awesome. Okay, meditation, reading, gardening, journaling, working out, walking, sleeping, yay for sleep, beach, cooking. I find cooking very relaxing too. Keep learning. You're getting yourself to keep learning. Time with my family. Yoga. Let's see what else I'm seeing that's different. Keep learning. Swimming. Whoa. So many ideas. This makes me so happy. Massage. Yay for massage. Okay, and the whole idea here is we realize that we have to take care of ourselves before we can take care of our family and before we can take care of our students. And so we want to make a point of paying attention to our own well-being. So it's awesome that we're going to talk about student well-being here, but I also want us to pay attention to our own well-being, ways to disconnect, ways that I can step away from my computer when I have my evenings or my weekends to myself. So try very hard to do that for yourself, right? All right, thank you so much for sharing. So let's see if we can get it to move. Okay, one or two. Okay, so here's the thing. While you're thinking about your own well-being, I want us to understand that everything that happens to us is not under our control. And so I want us to think about control for a moment and think about the idea of our circle of concern. And we'll talk about that in just a second. So what I want us thinking about is what do we have control over having to do with our jobs as educators? And what do we not have control over? So this comes actually from Stephen Covey, where he talks about the circle of concern and the circle of influence. So there is a handout in your folder that you can do after today. We're not going to do it right now because we don't have time. But in the outside circle, you write down everything you're concerned with having to do with your job. What are all your concerns, right? So we put those all around the outside. Then we go to the next circle in, what do I have control over? What do I have influence over? Okay, so for example, I'm really concerned because we're being told we're going to stay in the block schedule instead of going back to our old schedule. Is that within your realm of influence? No, you don't have an influence over the schedule. What do you have control over? What do you have influence over? So we start with the big circle, all the things that I'm concerned about. Now we go to the second circle in, what do I have control over or influence over of all those things on that outer circle? And so in my circle of concern, those are all the concerns I have. In my circle of influence, those are concerns that I have control over. And now the tiniest circle is called center of focus. That's where I'm going to take the things I have influence over, and I'm going to choose to focus in on one of those, right? And so we want to take it from big to a little bit smaller to very focused. And that's how we're going to decide, where is my center of focus going to be this year? And it does not have to be instructional. It could have to do with the way you're interacting with your colleagues. It could have to do with the way you're using your time, right? It doesn't have to be, I'm going to do this in my curriculum or in my lessons. It can be something wider than that. And so I want you to think about, what will you focus in on that you'll feel like you have control over during this school year? Because we can't fix everything all at once, right? So I think I already explained this slide, so I'll go to the next one. So if you use this model where we go from concern to influence to focus, you are being proactive. You are focusing your efforts on what you have control over. You're working on things you can actually do something about. You have the energy that's positive and enlarging and magnifying. And the results will be, you will widen your circle of influence. If you're being reactive, then we're focusing in on that outer circle, and we're focusing in on some things we cannot control. So then we neglect issues that are in our control, have blaming attitudes, increased feelings of victimization, and our influence circle starts shrinking. So obviously we want to be on the left side, focus in on what I have influence over, and then put my positive energy toward that. Also, when Covey talks about this circle of influence, he talks about reactive versus proactive people. Those are the haves and the bees. We want to be a bee, okay? So this is, if I only had a better boss, if I only had more of this, if I only had, right? That's going to keep us kind of in the negative. But instead, I want to be proactive. I can be this. I can be a better role model. I can be more organized. I can be this. So we want to be in the world of bees, not in halves, right? And again, that's going to help us start out the new year on a positive, kind of with that growth mindset. So what I'd like for you to do, now that I've taken you through that exercise, and certainly you can go back later and actually write it out for yourself and do a lot deeper thinking, but if you had to decide right now, what's within your circle of influence that you would want to focus in on for this coming school year, what would that be? So if you are ready to share that, if you're not, you don't have to share something. But those of you who've kind of gone through that mental exercise with me, I want you to tell me, what would you focus in on if you had to say what it was right now? And again, I'll ask Teresa to help me out.
All right, a very important first share, my own health and safety first.
So important.
Yeah, a couple teachers definitely echoing that sentiment. Someone else suggests balance, prioritizing balance. Getting help with something that I don't know how to do.
Seek help. That's a great growth mindset.
Time management, emphasizing connection. Let's see, meaningful relationship building. I think those are kind of the main themes.
I love it.
Mentoring other teachers, Trying not to reinvent the wheel.
Work smarter, not harder.
Focusing on how students are reacting by coming back into school full time. How are we supporting our students? Relating positively to students and taking time to interact and care for my colleagues.
Now,
Rebuilding
here's my advice.
relationships.
Oh, sorry, Teresa.
Oh yeah, just rebuilding relationships with students
Great.
and with colleagues.
Great. Here's the thing. I don't want you to make a whole lot of center of foci. I want you to pick one. Because remember, if we set too many goals, we're likely not to achieve them. But if we have a focus, and if we feel like we've accomplished our focus after so many months, we could change our focus. But try to find the thing that's going to have the most positive impact on yourself and your work, right? Awesome. Thank you for sharing. So here's what he says, what Stephen Covey says. He says, when we set and achieve goals that are in our center of focus, we maximize the use of our time in our effort. And boy, do we not have a lot of extra time, right? And so I want to maximize that time that I do have. All right. So I want to stay resilient then, right? I want to make positive, decisive actions. I want to look for opportunities for self-discovery. I saw on the word cloud, keep learning. So I'm going to keep learning and moving forward. I want to keep things in perspective. I want to nurture a positive view of myself, and I want to look to a hopeful future. So that's how I can remain resilient in the situation, right? And again, I'm choosing to do these things for myself. So there's a great toolkit that is on my webpage, and I believe I put it in your links page. If I didn't, let me know. And it's called 5 Ways to Wellbeing at Work. And it's a toolkit from New Zealand. And it gives you 5 big ideas that you see are across the top of the cover there on the right. So here's the 5 things we want to do to have well-being at work. Connect. I already heard that in your ideas. Connect with colleagues, connect with new teachers, making those connections. Talk and listen, right? So I'm not doing all the talking. Sometimes I'm just there to listen to others. Keep learning. Embrace new experiences, see opportunities, surprise yourself. That came up in our word cloud, right? Be active, do what you can, enjoy what you do, move your mood, right? So be in control of how you're feeling. Give your time, give your words, give your presence. Somebody said helping out other teachers, like struggling teachers or new teachers, when you give to others, it actually increases your well-being, right? And take notice. Remember the simple things that give you joy. Stop and notice what's around you. During your planning period, go out, take a walk, and just notice the nature, notice the sounds. Allow yourself to disconnect from all those other things, right? So here's what I want to know. Take my words, connect, give, notice, keep learning, and be active. And I want you to give me some advice. If I was a colleague struggling with my well-being at work, what have you learned about taking care of yourself and your well-being? So I'd love for people to tell me whether you can think of a connect, a give, a take notice, a keep learning, or be active. So anybody that wants to share, here's your chance to put it in the chat.
So if you want to give a colleague advice, for the connect one, what would you suggest a colleague do to better connect? So we've got a great suggestion from Karen for taking time to exercise as part of being active. So being active, and don't let one hard day get you down. Be active by going to the beach. It's an excellent idea. Let's see, a lot of focus on using physical activity to kind of get connected. Let's see. So getting good sleep. Connect by collaborating with other teachers to learn. So learning from other teachers.
Love it.
Let's see. Connect by inviting colleagues to take lunch together.
Love it.
Take notice by setting boundaries.
So important.
Connect by getting to know your students and the reality that they are living. Let's see, connect with colleagues outside of work sometimes to do some fun things, have dinner together. Invite others to go on a walk across campus, spend time with friends. Let's see, take notice that making mistakes makes you human to your students. It does not make you a terrible teacher. Take notice that every day is a new day, so you get to start fresh. Let's see, keep learning. So not just in your education focus, not just in your school building, keep learning in lots of different ways.
And, during COVID, lots of people were getting new hobbies. Everybody was baking sourdough bread and, all these things. Learn how to do something new that makes you feel good. Now, I want to react to the one thing that said, if there was a bad day, know that tomorrow is a new day. So one of the things I encourage teachers to do is keep what I call a warm, fuzzy folder. So in your warm, fuzzy folder, and I printed these out so I could look at them and touch them, I kept any little notes that kids gave me that were positive, and positive email from a colleague or a parent, all of these things that were positive, and I kept them in a folder. So if there was a day where things didn't go very well, I pulled out that folder and I looked at the things inside and reminded myself that I am okay, right? That I'm pretty good at what I do, even though today wasn't a great day. And so think about ways that I can always turn it back to the positive instead of feeling like it's always about us not doing what we should have done, right? I love your ideas. Thank you so much. So while I'm talking about the warm fuzzy folder, from August all the way to the first week in June, so for a whole school year, every Monday and Thursday, I posted a teacher well-being task. And so I ended up posting 85 total. And so if you go on my website, and I'll show you where that link is, you can find them. So if you'd like to go on that website and every once in a while challenge yourself to do one of the things on that list to address your well-being, you are welcome to do that, because that's exactly why I was doing it. I was worried about people's well-being and I wanted to share some ideas on how we can take care of ourselves. And so it's on my website on the page called Supporting Teachers' Well-Being, and it is a link in your links page. And I encourage you to take a look, because that 5 Ways to Well-Being at Work document is there, lots of other information about taking care of yourself. And as we finish up this segment, I want you to notice that there is a downloadable in our folder called Blank's Self-Care Plan. And if you find this useful, you can print it out and think about, okay, for this coming school year, how am I taking care of my mind, my body, and my spirit? What people are going to support me? And what am I hoping to accomplish? So you can see this like a vision board or just an affirmation of the kind of things you want to happen this year, whatever works for you. But I provided you a template so you have something you can look at to imagine, like, how can I make sure that I'm paying attention to these things for the next school year? Awesome. Thank you so much. Okay. Now let's go to social emotional learning for our students. So now that we're paying attention to our own well-being, how are we making sure that we're paying attention to our students' social and emotional learning? So let's make sure we all know what we're talking about. So the idea is that SEL, or social emotional learning, is the process through which children and adults understand and manage their emotions. They set and achieve positive goals. They feel and show empathy for others. They establish and maintain positive relationships, and they make responsible decisions. So here are these 5 facets of social emotional learning. And this is from a website called CASEL, CASEL.org. Everything you ever wanted to know about social emotional learning is on there. So take a look at that website if you haven't before. And what we want to teach children is self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. So if you've ever done any work in executive functioning in the special education world, some of these things look really similar to you, right? And so they're just kind of another way to package these ideas. So self-awareness is where we want students to recognize someone else's emotion and how that influences their behavior. So this is important because they want to assess their own strengths and limits, right, as well. So self-awareness of what am I good at? What do I need to get better at, right? So that whole idea, having kids feel equipped to do that. Self-management is to be able to regulate your emotions and your thoughts and your behaviors. And by the way, 21 of those 27 years in the classroom was at the middle school level. So I had a lot of kids in the classroom who weren't able to regulate their behaviors and thoughts, right? So this is teaching them strategies for that. This includes how to manage stress, how to control impulses, how to motivate themselves, how to set and work toward achieving goals. Also under social emotional learning comes social awareness. Are they able to take on the perspective of others and empathize with them from diverse backgrounds and cultures, understanding ethical norms of behavior, recognizing family, school, community resources and supports. Now, this is so important in what we do because we're trying to make global citizens, right? We want students that are able to interculturally communicate. In order for them to do that, we need to help them be able to take someone else's perspective, be able to empathize with someone else's situation. And relationship skills. We want them to have the ability to establish and maintain healthy and rewarding relationships with diverse individuals and groups. And this includes communicating clearly, listening actively. So how are we making sure that when they're talking to each other, they're feeling accountable for listening to each other? Resisting inappropriate social pressure, negotiating conflict, and seeking and offering help. And then finally, responsible decision making. We're helping students make constructive and respectful choices about their personal behavior and their social interactions. So basically, we're teaching students, there's the content, and then below that is how they should interact with one another. And boy, if there was ever a time in our country where we need to make sure the students know how to respectfully interact with others who are diverse, be able to empathize with other situation, it's this time in our history, right? And so as world language teachers, this is a natural fit for us because it's very much aligned with our culture's standard. It's very much aligned with interculturality and obviously to bigger ideas around diversity, equity, and inclusion. Okay, so why does social emotional learning matter? Well, 29% of students think their school provides a supportive environment. That's not even a third. 83% of students who make academic gains when they participated in SEL program. So if someone's paying attention to social emotional learning, actually their achievement rises, sorry. 11% average gain on standardized tests by participating in an SEL program. SEL programs improve behavior and attitudes towards school and prevent substance abuse. And 11% average increase in GPA for participants in a social emotional learning program. Only 25% of students say something positive about school. That makes us so sad. And do you notice that they start out really excited in elementary school and then kind of excited in middle school and not excited at all in high school? What happens that we're losing that positivity towards learning and school? And we know that this also builds emotional intelligence. So what I'd like to stop and do now is have you share some of the ways you were addressing your students' social and emotional well-being in this last school year. So what types of things did you do with your students to address these things? You can either, when you get to the Padlet, you can just double click on the board and type in your answer. If you want to add a picture of something or a link to something that you've actually done, that's awesome, not required. But I'd love for us just to kind of crowdsource a bunch of ideas from the group today. What are some things that worked well for you when you were checking in on your students' social emotional well-being? So at the bottom of the slide, you see a bit.ly and it's SEL, social emotional learning checks, as in check-in. So I'm going to go there with you. And we already have lots of people going. Okay, let me wait a minute to let you get some ideas on here. If you're unfamiliar with Padlet, just double click on the background and a little sticky note should come up and you can type in it. I love this one, good things or my good thing. There's one that one of my teachers always said, it's called Tell Me Something Good. And so there's a way, just tell me something good, something you're celebrating, something you're happy about today. Always trying to go with the positive. Brain breaks. Audio relaxation on YouTube. Ask students how they're doing. Play the would you rather do this or would you rather do that? And then that turns into a conversation. Circle time, in particular with elementary level kids. Journaling. Have calendar talk, but not just do the calendar and weather, but also talk about how you're feeling. Thorns and roses, that's a good one. What was thorny about today? So not so good. And what was the rose? So that was something that was bloomed and a great thing that happened for you today. One-on-one conversations, don't worry about that being old school. We need to do that. Exit tickets, how are you feeling? Proverb stories, I love that. This or that. Share anime, encouraging messages. Ooh, I love that one. Kids love anime and manga, don't they? Small group sessions. Oh, you will have fantastic ideas. Community work. Class meetings. Short meditation. Love it, love it, love it. So while I'm thinking about it, because I'm going to forget, for those of you who use YouTube, my favorite newest trick is that when you put the YouTube link in your search bar, in between the T and the U of tube, put a dash, and only your video will show up. There won't be any ads and things around the outside of it. So it's how to get rid of all the extra stuff on YouTube. So YouTube URL, go to the word tube, between the T and the U of tube, put a dash, and only the video pops up and fills the screen, not all the things that show up on YouTube. I love it. Thank you all so much. Ooh, you guys have been doing so many things. I love it. All righty, please keep going because I want to go back and look at those closer after we're done. All right. So one thing I want you to think about is, how could I add a social and emotional aspect to the content themes I teach? So I want you to think about the themes you teach. So something that we talked about in our district was often level 1 curriculum is very babyfied. They're learning weather and colors and clothing and all these things. They don't feel like they're doing much that means something to them. So we played around with how to deepen those themes a bit. And so while we talk about school, are we also talking about perseverance and resilience? Why it's good to hang in there, right? When we talk about family, are we talking about emotions? When we talk about what we do during our free time, are we talking about some people have different strengths and talents than others? When we talk about the house, are we also talking about empathy in terms of people who do not have homes? When we talk about food, are we talking about having gratitude for the food we have because not everyone has food? For careers, optimism about the future, my community, diversity, healthy lifestyle, mindfulness, and self-care. So it's very easy to add a social aspect and really kind of pair these up in your curriculum, like this would be a great place to put this in. This would be a great place to put this in, right? And so I want you thinking that way. Like after today's webinar, write out some of your themes and think about how can I make a social emotional connection in those themes that I'm teaching. So here are some ideas that I've collected about ways people were doing social emotional learning. And we could go through and check off so many of these because many of you said this in your Padlet posts. Begin each lesson with a positive, encouraging message in the target language. Today's a great day. You're going to do great today. I'm so glad you're here. It's in the target language, but it starts off everything on a positive, encouraging note. Do daily check-ins with kids, how they're feeling and all of that. Many of you wrote that down. Conduct a mindfulness activity. I saw that on the Padlet board. Lead a brain break. And remember, all of these things can be done in the target language. We don't need to stop and do the SEL part in English. I've collected lots and lots of examples for you on my Pinterest boards in the target language. Lead a brain break. Lead a discussion about empathy, resilience, gratitude. Lead a discussion about growth mindset and how it's important to not let your mistakes keep you from trying again. Keep trying. Mistakes help me learn, right? And we need, especially novice learners, to know that you're naturally going to make mistakes. You just started learning the language and it's part of the process. And then do lots of intentional community building things. So I want to do things that cause students to have to, oh, that person likes the same thing I do. Oh, we connect, right? So we want to find commonalities. We want to celebrate the diversity in the classroom. All right, so some examples. Here's 2 examples, one in French and one in Spanish, of a positive, encouraging message. So if you don't know French, on the left, it says, if you have confidence in yourself, you will inspire confidence in others. And on the right, thank you for being part of my life. So these are something you just put on your first slide that might have your agenda or your can-do statements, and it's just a positive way to start out class each day. I have a teacher in my district who, anytime she used little things like this, she printed them out and just put them on the bulletin board. And by the end of the year, it was covered with all of these messages in the target language. So if you're interested, and this is on your links page, I have a whole Pinterest board called Positive Encouraging Messages in the Target Language. So if you go there, I have lots of languages represented. If yours isn't, I encourage you to look for those and collect them. And they're just something to kick off the lesson with, to start off on a positive note. Then we've got daily check-ins. Lots of you were sharing that as things you were doing with students. And so obviously during COVID, we were doing lots of these things on Pear Deck and on Jamboard. But I want us to realize these things can easily convert into the face-to-face classroom, right? So this one on the top left has a bunch of emojis about how kids are feeling. And there's a little red circle that represents every kid, and they put it on top of how they're feeling. And then there's some sort of conversation that happens, like, why do you feel the way you do? And I'm giving them the sentence stems they need, and maybe some of the vocabulary they need to talk about how they're feeling. On the bottom right is an example in Spanish, and students put themselves along the continuum somewhere about where they're feeling. And again, this should always be followed up by some sort of interchange, some sort of communication, right? We don't want an activity just to be for the sake of you telling me one thing and we move on. We need to go deeper into it, give them the language they need to be able to communicate more deeply about their feelings today in the case of these. Here are 2 examples from someone I follow on Twitter, and I highly recommend that you follow her. Her Twitter handle is Mrs. Park Shine. She's an ESOL teacher, an ESL teacher. She has fabulous ideas. On the left-hand side, students were learning weather. And so the check-in was, what makes you feel sunny and what makes you feel cloudy? And students could add words, they could add pictures, they could add anything to talk about. On a cloudy day, I feel kind of like this. On a sunny day, I feel like this. And then they're able to have conversations with a partner or in small groups. On the bottom right, whole bunch of sticky notes of the same color, and they put their name on the sticky note, and then they change the color of the sticky note based on how they're feeling. So if they're feeling sad, they change it to the dark blue. If they're feeling happy, they change it to yellow. And then imagine how we could sort those where people go together in a group who are all feeling the same way and kind of talk about why they said that, right? And again, this could turn into a four corners activity. This could turn into a pair activity. Always thinking about what would we do next with this material now that kids have told me how they're feeling. These are also from her, a sign-off question. So some of you said exit ticket, right? Which ice cream flavor would you pick? Strawberry or chocolate? Now, here's what I love about this. Look on the right-hand side. She gave them the sentence frames. I will pick blank because it is blank, because it tastes blank. So we're giving them the framing. And then she started a word list: delicious, sweet, cold. Remember, we want students to be able to communicate about it. And then on the bottom, I feel blank today because of blank. So the teacher started out, I feel excited today because I get to see my students. And then the students use that same sentence frame to talk about how they're feeling today. That was on a Jamboard. Imagine how you could do that with strips of paper, where each student fills out a strip using that sentence frame. And then they take it to a group, or they hang them on the wall or whatever, and we process them in some way for communication purposes. And then, as I shared at the beginning of our session, you know that kids love these on a scale of things. And so you see I've got on a scale of Baby Yoda, on a scale of SpongeBob, on a scale of llamas. There are so many of them out there. If you go on Google and just put in on a scale of, you're going to find a lot of them. But actually you don't have to, because I made a whole Pinterest board of them. So if this is linked on your links page, it's under social emotional learning on a scale of, and you can see there I have 24, and I think I've added since then. I think there's about 27 on there right now. You can use to do a check-in and do these kind of fun on a scale of things with your students. Also, don't forget that we sometimes want to check in with students privately, because there's things they don't want to tell you out in front of their friends. So is there anything you need me to know? Do you need any help? Do you have any questions for me? I saw somebody put on the Padlet board that they use Google Forms where students can fill out the survey. That would be a great place to have students put things that they don't really want to express in front of their peers. Another thing we can do with students is breathing activities. And you notice here, this one is in Spanish. And so students trace the star as they breathe in and then breathe out and then breathe in and then breathe out. And so again, can totally be done in the target language. And then of course, brain breaks where they get up and they move around in some way. You can do this as a Zumba class, a Dance Dance Revolution, a yoga video, and again, try to keep them in the target language. So you'll see on your links page, I have a Pinterest board with lots of brain breaks I've collected in the target language to get you started for thinking about where you can find these things. And then we need to talk about things like resilience, empathy, and gratitude with students. And we can do that also in the target language. Notice how on the left, there's a little cartoon called What is Empathy in French. And on the right is a kind of anchor chart called How to Be Resilient. So we can still talk about these things in the target language. I have a whole page on gratitude. And so you'll see in the links, there's lots of social emotional themes that you can check out and see how they work into your lesson plans for the new school year. And then I also have tools on there where students can think about their strengths, talents, and uniqueness, and the fact that I'm different from you, and that's a good thing because it's good to have lots of differences. And so I like this. I'm very musically inclined. You're very athletic. That's good, where everybody has different strengths and talents and uniqueness, and trying to celebrate the fact that diversity is a good thing. And then just thinking of other ways to build relationship in a classroom, in a safe classroom environment. This is just a poster. It says, what did you learn today? What surprised you today? What made me laugh today? You know, so in other words, just again, these kind of check-ins that they might do as like a exit ticket for class. And then I love this. This is from Sam Spielberg in New York City. She does a thing called the 4 Ps of today. And the students get to choose whether they want to tell something that was positive that happened today, something they're asking forgiveness for, which I love that one. And you can even ask yourself to forgive yourself, a problem I encountered today, and a person I would like to highlight today. So again, it gets into that relationship building and feelings, and it can be used as something like an exit ticket. So on your links page, you're going to see that I have a whole page of strengths, talents, and uniqueness Pinterest links for you to use in different languages. I have a whole board on social emotional learning, and you can see there the first subboard is empathy, respect, and resilience. The next one is calming and breathing. There's feelings and emotions. So again, dig into these tools to see how many of them you can get to work for you. There's a whole board on gratitude and being thankful. And a whole board on mindset resources, growth mindset versus deficit mindset. And again, I try to collect lots and lots of things in the target language. All right, so as our last little thing, and oh, I just made it to 4:59, yay. Okay, so for our last little reflection, I'd like you to take a look at this infographic on the 6 domains of resilience. And I want you to pick the one domain that you want to celebrate about yourself today. What domain do you want to lift up as how you're being resilient through this time and into the new school year? And again, I'd love for you to share that in the chat. What do you want to share about your resilience?
All right, so we've got teachers sharing they feel like they're very resilient with collaboration, tenacity, vision, a couple people prioritizing health, but yes, a lot of tenacity, a lot of very tenacious teachers.
Awesome.
Health, let's see, folks that are good at reasoning, anticipating, and planning. Tenacity, vision, health, lots of health here. Reasoning.
Exactly. So the whole purpose of that final reflection is for you to lift up your own resilience, right? Because we need to be resilient in order to help our students be resilient. So thank you so much. And I'm going to hand it back to my friends who are running this. Let me stop sharing. There you go.